There's just 1 minute to showtime.
The engines are on.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
When they wrote up the systems and the rule set that we use, did working people get to write a line? What class of men on pen and paper jotted down their clues? With capital the heart of their design. When 90 million want a thing, but some shareholders say no. Which class of people get to have their way? The people read the fine print, say that this thing has got to go. And we'll start writing a new contract here today. Don't you know that hundreds will work and one man keeps the money? They don't think they gotta tell us why. When they say the new social contract, all the bosses will be gobsmacked and everyone will want a sign. Oh, everyone will want a sign.
What's up? I'm Jared, and I'm the one who's in staging right now.
Helps to be on camera when the show starts.
There's like a split second where I'm like, wait a second, am I supposed to click add to stage now, or will that...
Yeah, I was thinking that too, and I'm just sitting here like a dope, like we've never done this before. Well, welcome everybody to our stupid show where we don't know what we're doing.
We know what we're doing at least 10% more than your average Hot Topics podcast.
Well, thanks so much for being with us for another episode of Social Contract, a part of the Revolutionary Black Network, Blackout Networks, rather. My goodness, I can't even talk today. It's been a silly day already. If you hear any weird banging noises, that's on my end. I'm taking advantage of this 70-plus degree day in February, which is totally normal. So I've got my door open, and there's a plastic sheath in between that's banging in the wind where a thunderstorm is about to come. So
I was just in the actual Midwest, where most of the RBN like core founding members are from. And I was in not Minnesota. I was going to say Minnesota, and they're not close to each other. Milwaukee. I was in Milwaukee.
You got it too. We both have silly brains.
Milwaukee, Minnesota. Like one is a state, one is a city. I know that they are different places, but in my brain, I always have to like work through and remember which one. I was in Milwaukee for an event just this past weekend, and the weather went from first day we're there, beautiful, like t-shirt, maybe light jacket kind of weather, sunny and nice. Then it was the next day it blizzarded for 5 hours, and then the day after that, right back to like high 60s, low 70s, having a nice February in Milwaukee. So like, shout out to all my Midwestern people. However, I am now back in the Southwest, back in Phoenix. And if I sound tired or if my voice sounds gravelier than usual, that is why I spent a weekend yelling. Fun yelling,
just own it. Be like, yeah, no, I'm using my cool guy voice.
I will today be smoother and jazzier than ever.
Right? Yeah. Where I just sit here and yell and laugh all the time. So you've got the radio voice, and I've got the scream and yell and choke on my own spit voice. So yeah, there's that. But we're glad to have you with us today. Thanks so much. Some weird stuff has been happening. Just to kind of a little programming note, when we figure out what stories we want to talk about depending on what's going on. I know that if you've been watching and keeping score at home, that we talk a lot about the what's going on with Palestine. But things have been kind of holding there right now. Not a lot of new information coming out, FYI bad, but just not a lot to really say that's changing. We're kind of all standing here waiting with bated breath. So about what horrible thing's going to happen next. So we kind of come up with our stories late in the week, a couple days before air. And at the time, it looked like we were still in that holding pattern as far as not really having any new information and regarding that conflict. And that changed. So we have some kind of an eclectic bunch of stories for you today of what we were planning, and kind of it's a little less than breaking news at this point, but we did want to have take a moment to mention something really important that happened Sunday, which was the act of self-immolation by an active duty airman, Aaron Bushnell, outside of the U.S. Israeli embassy over the weekend. It was unexpected, and he's actually not the first person to take this stance in regards to this conflict. And you are going to hear right now, while this story is going on, a lot of opinions, and we have our own opinions. But where we stand on this is essentially this. There are going to be people who are going to skew the story as, well, he was a suicidal person, he was a religious zealot, he was, not acting in good faith, he had mental illness, and when they're using a mental illness as a blanket term for anything that is disagreeable to mainstream society. But you're also going to hear the other extreme of people saying, well, this is the only act of real protest that anybody could really do. Some of these people might not be talking in good faith and have, horror movie ideations and saying that, like, this is great, but you don't see them, signing up to do it. So where we really stand on this is that you should really drown out the opinions, because everyone's going to take this and run with it in their own direction and suit their own narrative, whether they, are trying to downplay it or they're trying to play it up. It's really your own personal call on where you agree with this, because it's okay to not be okay with the act personally or feel like it's upsetting, but agree with the sentiment. And Jared mentioned earlier, I'll let him elaborate on this, but when you kind of take yourself out of the protest, your voice is gone. So that's,
for all intents and purposes, it looked like Aaron was a principled. People are throwing like, I hate using any of these ideological labels because it ends up reducing somebody's life down to like the word anarchism, or like was he a comrade? There have been a bunch of pictures I see floating around, and we're within a couple of days, so I take all this stuff with a grain of salt. We might find out in a week that was entirely fabricated, but it looks at least semi-likely to be true. Right. That Aaron was out there doing soup kitchen work, studying theory, like,
and we do have to take it at face value, just like you said. We are taking it for what it seems like we know. We might have to backtrack or something, but yes, we're taking it for what we all seem to know.
From what I'm seeing online, it looks like Aaron was a principled person and a principled anti-imperialist, and like that is what that informed his actions and the protest form that he ultimately used to end his life. My point is that once you are out of the game, you lose your ability to act. You lose your ability to affect the struggle. You cannot participate in class struggle if you are not there to do so. And while it certainly sounds like me and Aaron would agree when it comes to the Palestinian conflict and ending the genocide, we need all the comrades we can get. This means now we have one less guy out there doing soup kitchens and stuff, like actually out there doing the work. And when people who are out there doing the work voluntarily die, well, there you go. You have one less person in the fight. We have one less Air Force member who could be a potential like revolutionary if things get going. Like if you have this goal of trying to infiltrate and be able to take and influence power when things become crucial. If you want to be the guy who's supposed to hit the button to start World War III and you say, no, sir, I will not, like, if you want to be that guy, you have to be alive to do it. While at the same time, I have no interest in trying to minimize I guess what we would call positive effects of his sacrifice. Like, if it turns out in a year, this was the thing that broke the dams burst forth and the revolution's getting going, then I'm an idiot and he was completely correct to do it. But we aren't a death cult, right? We aren't the ones who are out there. The thing you should do is die. That's not us. We are the to use a really charged. We are the pro-life movement. We are the pro-humanity movement, right? We want our fellow Americans, people around the world, to all live in abundance, and it's hard to square that with. Also, the best thing you can possibly do for the movement is die in a dramatic way. Am I making any sense?
Yes, no, you're making complete sense, because where I'm in agreement with you on this. But where I really stand on the issue is that, this is a big deal right now. This is the biggest deal of basically what's been going on, and we all can kind of agree on that this is a
And
very
yeah,
serious
Aaron
moment.
Bushnell. We're not like hiding Aaron Bushnell's name.
No, yeah, we've
Yeah,
mentioned
we're
it a
not,
couple of times.
I'm not trying to
Sorry
unsay his name or anything.
yes, yeah, we have mentioned it, but the fact of the matter is this, or at least where I stand on it is you can appreciate the sentiment, but not be happy about the methodology. Because to me, this seems like this is going to be another horrible death thrown on the pile of hundreds of or tens of thousands, at least, of other horrible deaths of Palestinians, and more to come. And ultimately, when the news cycle moves on, it's very likely that it's going to go way more than it's going to stick. And that's just the nature of things. Not that nobody cares, just the nature of things. So this is an act that, although it's, you can call it revolutionary, you can call it, obviously you don't want to minimize it, but you don't know how much real impact it's going to have, because I look at it in a way, I guess, pessimistically, that this is not going to move the needle on what's really happening. It's not like the United States government or British government or the Israeli government are all going to suddenly be like, well, we're okay with killing tens of thousands of Palestinians and trying to starve out the rest and exterminate an entire culture of people. And we no longer care about turning it into new McDonald's, and we no longer care about the resources underneath their feet. This was a bridge too far. This was too much. Now we're done with it. That's not going to happen, guys. It's really just not going to happen. It is mission ago. This is just collateral issues. Not, I wouldn't even say damage, because it doesn't damage the people who are making the money and making the decisions and playing the long game on what they are going to ultimately benefit from. And that is something that, it's hard to say, like, how can it be two things at once? But it basically is. It is an act of obvious dedication to the movement, and when we say it was an act of self-immolation, in plain English, what that means is that the man set himself on fire in front of an embassy and burned to death, screaming for, the rights of Palestinians to live, and that shouldn't be minimized. But how much of an impact it's really going to have over time is hard to say. And it's disappointing, like Jared said, that we have lost a comrade in the fight.
I wish the universe worked in a way that our feelings and pain and the messages that we're trying to powerfully put forth could affect the material world. But since we don't live in that world, it skews closer to tragedy, because it's like, man, I fully believe in what Aaron believed, like,
Right.
in the goal of ending the Palestinian genocide. Absolutely.
Ideologically,
I wish somehow
we probably all agree.
I wish that somehow spirit bombed a general into like, oh, you know what?
I
wish
heard
it had
a
that
little
kind
bit
of
of rumblings of people saying that the military is pretty spooked by this, that there are people that are really bothered by this or worried
general
about
servicemen, I'm sure, like your everyday grunts, absolutely.
Sure. And then even the higher ups are kind of worried that this might inspire some, insurrectionist type of behaviors. But I think from what we would just, kind of cap this off and saying is that new information is going to come out probably about the whole thing. What is real, what is not will be, we'll souse out in time. But if you really want to honor his memory and what he stood for, even if it's just making posts online, if you are in areas where these politicians live, don't give them peace. Go, if they try to eat at a restaurant, if they try to give a speech, get out there and interrupt it. That's always a good thing to do. Don't get yourself hurt, obviously. We're not advocating that. But we do think that, if you can be out there, get out there. And I think, just from my perspective, most especially, encourage everyone, or, really, really bang the, shake the tambourine for this one. Do not join the military. Stay away from the military, because you cannot, it is really hard to argue that you are for life and against genocide when you are a tool of the machine, carrying it out, and you have no say in the situation. So if you, this is a problem that we'll probably have to deal with down the way, but, just try to, influence anybody in your life. If you knew any young people who are trying to figure out what they want to do after school or things like this, or feel like they're going to be pushed into it due to poverty, if you're a person older than them with, some life experience, do your best to let them know that there are other ways. And yes, of course, we all know people who have made military careers very successfully, working in tech, IT, things like this, who didn't necessarily have to participate in combat, but that's not the main experience for most people who sign up. It's really not. They promise you that you're going to make tons of money and that you're going to get this really great career in education, and it's basically a lie. It's very, very seldom that someone really is able to benefit from that system, and that is by design. So at least I can say that I just, as much as you possibly can, discourage anyone in your life from joining the military and perpetuating this anymore. And
unless you want to go.
Well, we're going to end up in a situation, we've talked about this before, where recruitment numbers are going to continue to fall because people are not falling for this anymore and not signing up. So has been talk about, instituting drafts again, and then we're all going to have to get in the streets for that one. But at least for right now, if you want to honor his memory, don't put yourself or don't encourage others to put themselves, especially if they're young people like he was, into these situations where they feel like there is no way out but having to kill yourself for your message.
Unless you're going to be a Chelsea Manning, but then you have to, the state will try to kill you.
Right. Yeah. There's, it's and I don't think anybody really needs to be educated by us about how the military is a scam. Of course, there are people who have benefited from it. We all know at least one person we can name, but for the most part, you're going to come back, messed up with PTSD, with no good health care, no good options, and no really good way back into life where you can live well and not deal with the problems and issues that you were forced into dealing with. It is a corporation, and people are the capital in that corporation that gain more capital. And obviously, of course, are, the main polluters and destroyers of the world. So with that being said, we're gonna kind of go back into some more domestic situations that we were talking about. We've kind of, it hasn't been intentional, but we kind of had a through line the last few weeks where we talked about some states getting involved in some medical debt cancellation, but we were skeptical of it, and we still are. The jury's still out on that one, because then it looked like they would potentially be selling the debt to make money off of it. And then last week we talked about a Medicaid expansion, and I think it was, what was it, maybe it was also Minnesota. No, I don't know. I can't remember now. Or no, it was North Carolina, I think. But they did a Medicaid expansion, and they were really proud of it and really happy about it. But again, knowing that Medicaid is a predatory system, to me, it sounded, very, very sus. So we have another story that kind of actually does seem like a good thing, and I can't really find a problem with it in this instance. But it turns out Minnesota schools, now this is a little bit of an older story. It came out, they actually made this decision last year, at the end of last year, and then decided that we were going to go forward with it. But now we're, a few months into the new year, this is how it's going. So Minnesota schools have pushed for free meals across the board for all students, and meaning breakfast and lunch. And the only real complaint about it locally seems to be that it's going to cost a lot more than anybody had anticipated, to which I say, so the fuck what? Who cares? There's really nothing more important than feeding children, especially if you're going to keep them locked up like prisoners for 7 hours a day, sometimes more given after school programs. So this doesn't look like a bad thing to me. We have talked about, where these other programs seem like they might be good things but have a catch, but there's really no downside to feeding kids.
Oh, don't worry. I got the, the idea of yin and yang, where it is in the darkness there is a drop of light, and in the light there is a drop of darkness. I got that drop of darkness. I'm ready.
Oh, you're ready? Okay.
I just didn't know if I
great. Well,
didn't know if I wanted me to throw it in yet or not.
That I wanted to make was that there hasn't been a great way to study the data yet, just because it's so early in the program, right? But over the C word outbreak time, we don't say it because sometimes you can get your videos pulled from things like YouTube if you use the word. But you know what I'm talking about, what happened the last few years. Well, I didn't find out if this was nationwide, but I think it was. But at least wise, for the point of this argument, in Minnesota, all meals became free to students during that epidemic, no matter what. And what they ultimately found out was that it really leveled the playing field for students about who was getting what. It made everybody equal because, in comparison, in Indiana, with you incur any lunch debt now, and I'm not really. This was a story from a couple of years ago that's really basically just went away because Indiana is fine with the worst things you can imagine. Their way of handling lunch debt, which I'm sure a lot of other states do, is if you incur a certain amount of lunch debt, then you are provided with a like a water and a bag with a peanut butter sandwich in it. So everybody knows that you are either disadvantaged or your parents have incurred lunch debt on your behalf and haven't paid your debt. So it absolutely ranks the students among each other. And, you know, Indiana doesn't care about that kind of stuff at all. And I'm sure a lot of other states are doing the same thing. So when you look at the data that came out of the epidemic times that Minnesota at least did, they found out that not only were they making sure that everyone was eating, and they knew it, or anybody that wanted to, let's say, that they then couldn't, you know, there was no judgment between them because everyone was receiving the same treatment. And the main argument against it, which when you think about it, it sounds like, hey, yeah, it's like, okay, well, then if everybody's getting it, then that means that wealthy people's children are getting it too. Then they don't need it. Okay, well, yeah, that doesn't sound like a good thing, right? And that's not to say that all wealthy, like ultra wealthy people are virtuous and wouldn't opt out of the program because they could afford the situation. You know, they could afford not to have to take advantage of it. But then again, you think about like, okay, we're talking about Minnesota, right? And so how many really ultra wealthy people are in Minnesota that have their kids in public schools?
It becomes the percentage game. When you talk about the 1%, it's like, oh, we're going to accidentally feed 1%. It's fine.
That's exactly the point. Like how many, like that's kind of a bad faith argument, honestly. Like, because you really got to think about like, what are the numbers here of where, you know, because if we look at the way things are, everybody knows this. Everybody knows we're all economically struggling. But even a household that's bringing in a joint or single income of like $100,000 a year, you know, they could still be struggling too. So just on the surface, then it sounds like, they don't need it. They live in a nice house. They dress their kids well. They, you know, that doesn't mean that they don't need the help as well. So this brings up in its own way, its own set of judgments on people. Because again, like I really have a hard time believing that there would be a significant number of ultra wealthy people taking advantage of this situation who would even have their kids in public school in the first place. So from my point of view, this seems like a good thing. But it sounds like Jared's got an alternate take that I'm interested in.
Well, that's the thing. It's not even like the end effect. This is kind of like how if we do a story about labor negotiations and the workers get a win from they get concessions from their bosses. I see this as a concession. It is positive to receive that concession, whether it be an increase in wages, like vacation time, or in this case, getting free provided meals for public school, which is a thing that's already publicly funded anyway. So like there's already a ton of money going into it. So the idea that you wouldn't have a lunch included is just like weird because like you have to be there. Like as an 8-year-old, you can't be like, oh, I'll simply walk down to the corner store and get a sandwich. Like you're basically in like a nicer version of prison. You're not allowed to leave. So
and I will attest to that. Actually, I'm not sure what I went to school quite a while ago. But I always referred to it as day prison. They were watching your comings and goings. You were not allowed to leave campus. Where I went, it was, you know, a terrible place to be. So I'm sure it's gotten much, much worse, you know, as things have gone on. So yes, 100% agreement there. It's very much like a day prison.
So like, as always, my critique, I try to focus on ownership relations. Who owns the lunch program? Like, when we talk about funding school lunch programs, it's not that money goes directly to schools to directly get food or directly to farmers, or you hire a third-party company. When I went to public university, we had a company called Aramark. Aramark was the food providing. Actually, they might even have that in Indiana if you look at like trucks. Aramark, or they might have been bought at this point by some parent company. Regardless, multi-billion-dollar company, and they made most of their money on prison food, and then their second source of income was college food, that was the joke time. Haha, they feed us prison food. Well, what this ends up becoming is a way to kind of directly funnel public money into the hands of private corporations. Yet again. At least in this case, it does result in kids getting food, but if that's how the incentive structure starts, if that is how the system is set up to operate, what are the incentives of Aramark? Is it to provide highly nutritious food at affordable rates? Or no, it's they're in negotiations to maximize to maximize returns and minimize costs. And so you're going to get the cheapest, shittiest food possible while whoever CEO of whatever company, it's the same reason freaking Phoenix's metro system sucks. It's because it's run by Valley Metro, a third-party company. When do they get paid? When they're building new stuff. So why would they ever fix anything? Why would they ever build anything that is quality when they get paid more to fix the thing they built poorly in the first place? You know what I'm saying? It's not that a single evil individual is the cause of this. It is the incentive structures of the system itself inevitably create these kinds of problems. At least now, the food is free for the kids, though. Like. That is definitely a positive.
Someone who needs it is benefiting. We can at least say that much.
They do at least get the food. We assume,
Yeah, there's that. And they had said in an article that we're referring to that the school systems and the government, signing this bill into law, that they had been able to take their mind off of chasing down lunch debt and worrying about things like this and focus on giving kids full nutritious meals. And we know that a few years back there were some federal laws that went into effect about what you could serve into schools and what kids could eat and this kind of thing. And in some places, of course, because they were run by private companies, they were skimming and scrimping as much as possible, so kids were getting terrible meals and they were posting it online and that kind of a thing.
Well, they're going to make deals with whatever provider of blank greasy hash browns who, we got to feed them that, what I mean? It just spider webs out.
Right, yes. And
let's get McDonald's in here, woo!
Actually, my high school did do that kind of thing. I don't know who was running it at the time, and this is kind of going back into my memory. But they had done some kind of fuck around where they were paying retirement funds for cafeteria workers out of the budget for food. And yeah, right?
Your choice. Do you want pensions or food for children?
Somebody, I guess, they kind of took it gradually, most people, but then some horrible food villain decided they want the whole thing now, so there's no food budget. So what their solution was to start, it's not necessarily catering, you would say, but start having different foods coming in from other restaurants into the food into the the school cafeteria. And it made it seem like it was going to be, you're going to get pizza today if you want it, or you can get a Subway sandwich today if you want it. And these prices were completely inflated. If you were allowed off of campus, you could go buy twice the food somewhere at actual a Subway or something compared to what they were trying to make.
It's like you're at the airport.
And what's funny about this is this was not an affluent school. Absolutely not.
It's usually the poorest that get that kind of shit. It's weird.
Yeah. So this is going to kind of lean into our next story, but this was an absolutely not affluent school. It was a terrible school, as a matter of fact, with a terrible reputation. Christo-fascism ruled. And the thing of it is that my particular class was well known for being extreme assholes. We were the worst. I mean, teachers would complain about it. They'd be like, I've been teaching for 35 years and I've never seen anything like this. You guys are the worst people who have ever lived. So I won't get into every horrible thing that we did, but we worked together to sabotage everything we possibly could. And I happened to be friends with somebody who was like, this food shit is bullshit. And that person started a theft ring, which extended so far among all the other students and became so popular that once the school realized that this theft ring was going on with these expensive foods that they were trying to upsell, then they put in cameras and started literally watching people go through the lines. But it was really great at the time that it was going on. So yeah, at least these kids don't have to steal, but it wasn't just about, oh yay, we get to steal, because we definitely were like that. I really wasn't a part of excited neat school at school. But not to say I'm a goody or anything. One time somebody's like, do you want this sandwich? I stole it. And I'm like, okay.
I'm now remembering.
I'm not absolving myself and saying anything like that. I advocated. If you're in that situation, steal the fucking food.
I
But
would
it's
commonly take a second carton of chocolate milk and hold it like under my tray, like in the same hand.
there you go.
That
There
was
you go.
35
Well, you
cents right
gotta
there,
support
people.
yourself. You got to look out for yourself, and and at the time it was like other people looking out for other people as well before they realized that what was going on, because they were bringing in this outside food, upselling it, and trying to make the money back that they had squandered. So they were trying to make money off of children. So it's like, go fuck yourself, okay? So that's just, a personal example of that. And I'm sure that there are other schools running just as stupidly as that did. And I don't know if they ever recovered from that. I went to school 20 years ago. So if they ever recovered, I don't know. But the idea is like, at least these kids don't have to resort to theft. And should we have been thinking about spending our time thinking about having to steal food? Honestly, should we have been, whether we were high schoolers or middle schoolers or whatever? It was in high school, but just to say, and of course it was fun for a lot of people who were involved. But I'm not, that's not the argument I'm making. The point is, it should never have even been an issue. And at least now, whether it's, hopefully not total garbage food, like, Jared was saying, it's provided by an outside company. But at least these kids, especially little kids, can eat without being judged, because everybody's getting the same shit unless you're bringing it from home, and they can just focus on eating, right? They've got to be there. They don't have a choice. They are legally obliged to be at this school for a minimum of 7 hours a day. Feed the fucking kids. There's no question about this as far as I'm concerned.
Sentence I think is interesting in this article I just came across, like, there was an initial they talk about how the costs were higher than they initially anticipated, and like, of course they were, but I see this line where there is an initial scramble to accommodate the 60% increase in students showing up for breakfast, which just shows like, well, there apparently 60% of your students had a need that was just in no way being filled.
Right.
It just shows like how much of a failure the system already is. The fact that it's now free, finally, it's like, man, at least the slop doesn't cost money.
Right.
I would love to, if I was some like localist utopian, I would love to see some situation where it's, man, I am a food service worker, or I am a chef, and I live in this town, and I live by this elementary school, high school, whatever. Oh, look, they're hiring with decent paying food service jobs. That's now you're basically like a state employee cook for the kids of your, like, how wholesome of a dang position does that exist? Without going through like 7 or 8 middlemen, which is how it works now, without going through all these different, or what if it's like, local beloved restaurant, every 5th Thursday, that's blah blah blah's day, and they're coming in and they're gonna, like, there's so many cute, wholesome, actually productive to your community things that can create and retain value within. Oh, look, we have a student chef program where your home ec class, you're gonna make, like, this is me with 5 seconds and no thought. But none of that can occur if all of the money is funneled into Aramark or an Aramark analog corporation that just race to the bottom, lowest possible cost food. Hey, let me give my tiny China example. Well, while realizing I can't possibly understand all of the ins and outs of how it works, but I've seen several like TikToks at this point, which is Chinese, apparently in China, there was concern over what kind of food is getting served to our kids, and an idea that somebody had was, hey, what if we just put a freaking webcam and just, like, basically live stream the prep of this food so your parents can just watch, like, oh, yep, all right, that's what they're eating, that's what they're making, cool. And so that creates, what kind of incentive does that create? Now the schools kind of compete with each other a little bit to be like, oh, look at our food, oh, look at, and it's all made in-house. You see people with their hands cut a vegetable, put it in a bowl.
And you get to monitor the conditions in which as well it's being prepared.
They're not messing around.
They're not cutting like mold spots off of stuff, or that seems like a really excellent idea to me, compared to a lot of what a lot of people are going through. And interestingly, what you say about that. We had a rival school not too far away from us, and the rival was completely manufactured by the adults. We didn't give a shit about it whatsoever.
Entertainment.
Yeah, for the entertainment. Well, the rival school was in this, not really even super close, but just it was a rich versus poor. We were the poor school, the more urbane school, and they were the more urban or less urban, more rural, wealthy, very very wealthy school. And they had an agricultural program, and we didn't. they had a split schedule program and we didn't, which means they got extra classes by going, every other day to certain classes. So they got a better education. And they also had food programs like what you were describing, where they would participate, like it was sort of, I was desperate to go to a school like this because I always wanted to pursue art, and I knew back then that I wanted to pursue art and writing and things like that. But they made you stick to this curricula that was so generic and useless that it really wasn't doing anybody any favors, and all this bad education stuff is a whole different story. But But since they had that split schedule, you could take agriculture and you could focus on if that you wanted to make that your career, or you could focus on if you wanted to make music your career. And you took stuff that was more geared. Like obviously you still had to take history and math and English and everything, but you were able to have an opportunity to take things that were more geared to where you thought you were going to go. So in essence, it was preparing you for the future better than our school did. They just were like, here, go, get out, basically. So you went and you got into the world and you're like, I don't know any skills. I don't know how to do anything, but the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. You had nothing where compared to these kids that had a really good step in the right direction. But as you described, they did have meal programs where if you thought you were going to go into, the culinary type of things, you could take some culinary courses and participate in the meal making that went on with, the day-to-day stuff. Like they weren't just going to throw it away, and our school did have that, but they would be like, here, bake 12 dozen cookies and eat it yourself. Don't share it. Like that was always the mentality. It was this greedy, awful mentality. So it really does come down to obviously income and income level. And I know that like there are red line schools that suffer from this way worse than where I would have gone to. But there are schools out there that aren't charter schools, but that are public schools and are doing something where they actually have a mind of putting future adults into the future while helping the community. And I think that would, if they weren't, as you say, paying private companies and disallowing anyone to participate in the program. And somebody said this. Okay. Are You Time Travel 2 says, stories about lunch ladies giving food away and being fired. That's like what you said as well. That's true. You do hear about that. People who are like, I'm not going to be like, here's your lunch, here's your lunch, here's your lunch, fuck you, starve. Here's your lunch, here's your lunch, here's your lunch, fuck you, starve. Like that, like how do you can't reckon with that. So, and I have heard those stories for sure. So it's like, yes, that would be, if you were in culinary and, even a student, that would be a rewarding way to feel like you were giving back to your community, and an easy way because it's in your field. It's what you like to do. I think that we kind of hit a wall here about how school is suck. Like everybody hates school. Well, but
I think this absolutely fits into your next story. We're talking about what happens when you're an adult and want to buy lunch and you live in the middle of nowhere.
Or if you live in a red-lined area and you're being absolutely taken advantage of. It is true because I didn't intend it this way exactly, but these stories are kind of both food and supply living based. Because the next thing that we wanted to cover really was
I got a good screenshot. This is this is a good launch quote.
Yeah, no, this is where I was turned on to this idea. So what you happen to see here, what Jared's kind of scrolling through and giving you a visual of, is for those who are uninitiated. I'm like old school Tumblr. I've been on Tumblr for more than 10 years. When they had their adult content ban, I left and was gone for like 4 years, and I'm back. I've been back for a couple of years now that they've lifted it. So it's always been a platform that's really appealed to me. I really get it. It worked for me.
You survived the Gamergate.
Oh yeah, no, I love it there. Like honestly, like it's not like any other platform. The reason that I even joined Twitter, because I never did before, was because I left Tumblr, and now I'm hearing that it's going the other way around. That people, because they didn't like the way that Shmilan was doing stuff, and then kind of went to Tumblr. But you can get a note over your head there pretty easily because there's a lot you could do there. Anyway, I digress. But the really great thing about Tumblr that you get where you don't get it anywhere else on the internet is the aggregate posts. And what that means is that it's where community, like it turns into a community conversation. And usually it's meme related or fandom related, funny stuff for the most part. But a lot of times also, depending on where you're looking, you can find really useful information where people are posting screenshots of tweets about a certain subject. Then somebody will come in and post some graphs. behind it to back up what they're saying. Then somebody will come in behind them and post some articles that back up what that's saying. And then somebody will come in behind them with a personal story of how this affected them or their community, so on and so forth. So this post thread actually started in 2018 and went on until 2024 till now. And because people kept aggregating it and saying, this is how this is going, this is how it's going. So what is it? The Dollar General stores. And there's Dollar General and there's
Family
Dollar, which is owned by one of the others. There's two major ones. Oh, okay, here it is. Dollar Tree owns Family Dollar, I think, and then there's Dollar General. So there are three main ones. And now I know that there are also discount shops called like Five Below and stuff like that, but I think those are not the same thing, or like $10
That's like
or
the
less.
Five Below is like tchotchkes. It's like goofy.
Yeah,
shit.
okay, yeah, or like school supply type things. But the thing of the whole MO of the dollar store is basically what we're looking at here, is that people, within this thread, started pointing out that what we all basically already know, especially people, again, who live in redlined areas or very urbane area food deserts, that these pop up everywhere. There are a plague of them, and there are currently more of them than Walmart and McDonald's locations combined in this country. Dollars, when you're talking about the $3 major dollar stores. And what that really equates to is they set up a business model. Let's see, and the numbers are as for just for Dollar General, they already have about 20,000 stores nationwide, with a plan to add 800 more this year. And the Dollar Tree Family Dollar has 16,000. So again, yeah, that's more than Walmart and McDonald's locations combined. That is in some places you could see a McDonald's from a McDonald's. We know how dense those populations already are. So they have, and we know that places like McDonald's and Walmart are designed to, take a good thing, which is get the stuff to the people, but then also use it to take advantage of people as much as possible, because they know you need the things, right? And I happen to be of the mind that everything should be based on like delivery service at this point. So we don't have these gigantic depots of nothingness that just sit there a lot of the time. And but again, I digress, because I could go on a tangent of this forever. So the idea is that their whole strategy is to go where even Walmarts don't see a profit or an ability to profit. And there are many people, whether you're rural or urbane, it really doesn't necessarily matter the conditions. This happens everywhere, which we all are familiar with the term of a food desert, which means there's no good source of nutritious or plentiful food, like a local, because with all these large stores, there used to be, corner stores, lots and lots of bodegas around. There used to be little mom and pop shops, like, little grocery stores everywhere. That's the way things were, I guess maybe you'd say, going back to the 80s and before then. That's how things work before the supermarket happened. And we also know that Kroger is the largest food conglomerate. They own pretty much all of the other stores. And right now, with the only one that they don't own, which is Albertson, I believe, they're trying to merge.
There's
some antitrust.
They beat Walmart at this point. There's more Kroger shit than Walmart's.
Yeah, and well, that's the thing. Is they're trying to merge into like the biggest food conglomerate, I guess, probably on the planet.
Everywhere I go, I ask them what their Kroger is. Like, what's your Kroger? And they're like, ours is called, what is it, Ralph's. Like, ours is called Fry's. Yes. Ours is called.
And then actually, ours is the ones local to us, or the ones in Indiana, are Kroger's. Are called. You just have
you're near the Ohio epicenter.
Yes, but on their paper bags, they will be like, this is our family of stores, and they will list. There's like a list of like 20 stores that are like Ralph's, or just different names of things. And Publix, I think they own now, and they're here in the South. And so the idea is that they separately from this dollar store situation, they want to become the biggest food conglomerate, like in the country, maybe the world, and which obviously would create a monopoly for the most part on where food comes from, the quality of it, and the price of it. And we all know that we're basically going, under because of the price of food. There's no regulation on this, none on the horizon that's going to bring this down. People are like, well, inflation, well, that's horseshit. This is corporate greed. Where they look to an opportunity to inflate their prices, and nobody's stopping them. So why would they? That's how corporations work. So operating on that same model, let's go back to the, come around again, go back to the original point. The Dollar Trees and the Family Dollars and the Dollar Generals have decided that they can go into these communities, especially small communities or rural communities, where the Walmarts and the Krogers have determined they're not going to make enough money, or they don't, want to deal with it, or they just don't see a future for themselves there, or haven't got there yet. So, you'll have $2, $3, $4 stores pop up in a very small radius, where they know a lot of people are using public transit or walking, and which was great back in the days when you could just go over to the corner market, or that kind of a thing. Like in my particular area, not in my exact neighborhood, but right near it, we have what's essentially a bodega, but it's a village pantry, and everybody calls it VP, and it's been here for decades, and it services a couple of neighborhoods, really old neighborhoods. And before we had all the mega grocery stores around us, I remember being a kid and my mom being like, I got to run down and grab a thing of milk. And she would go to this little bodega. So that's the way it used to work, and it worked for everybody very well. But now that we have these conglomerates that are deciding where they're going to be and what supply of the food they're going to control and how they're going to control it, the Dollar General is looking at this as opportunities, and they see the dollar signs in this, because basically they go where Walmart or Kroger or wherever won't go. And what they do is they get into these places, and they deliberately use the model of taking advantage of people that they know have no other opportunities or no other resources to get any further. Some people that use the large grocery stores, you'll get in your car, you drive down a couple blocks to the large grocery store, you buy several large amounts, of a cart full of food, which amounts to several bags, and then you drive it home and you tote it into your house or your apartment, whatever. For a lot of inner city and rural people, this may not always be possible, either economically or physically. Like, you cannot sit there and line your body with 70, 80 pounds of groceries and then walk 3 miles back to your house or wherever. It just doesn't make sense, and they know this. So ultimately what they do is they seek out these places, and they don't just be like, oh, we'll put one in this kind of disadvantaged area, this food desert. No, they go like pop up like next door to each other. They're like, go. And there is an immense density to the way that they're doing this, so that the people in need cannot go anywhere else. So, or don't have any other options. So they're forced, if they want to eat, they are forced to go into these places. And, we have heard a little bit about some of them being kind of forced into carrying fresh produce, right? Because they were kind of said that if you're going to, it even kind of, this goes back to what we were saying a little bit earlier. The government did get a little bit involved to say, you're selling people garbage, at least put a goddamn tomato in your store. So they said, okay, we'll do that. But then they put in produce that is disgusting and rotting, and they don't change it out, so they're only barely following the rules that were set out for them. They know what they're doing. And ultimately what they have figured out that they can do is that they go into these places, and it goes beyond the idea of the shrinkflation. That's just a keyword, a buzzword, bunch of bullshit. What they do is they sell their products. Yeah, you could say you go into the store and you get a box of Cinnamon Toast Crunch, right? Or you go to the Kroger, you get a box of Cinnamon Toast Crunch. The ounce amount of each box is going to differ, because they have figured out that if they sell things they can sell, since you have no other choice. If you want that box of cereal, you can't get it anywhere else. They can sell it for like 30% less content within the box at an inflated price. So that ultimately, when you compare cost to amount, the people that are being forced into using these dollar stores or choosing to are paying a price that is equivocal to paying for Whole Foods prices. And I think that, that goes into, I've never actually shopped at a Whole Foods, but I know that they're known for being excessively expensive.
I was in a Trader Joe's once. I've never shopped there.
I'm not like I said, I'm big on the ordering thing. Like, I don't want to go in and mess around. Like, so like, but
I've seen a Whole Foods, I think, once.
Yeah. I know where there is one, but I know where there is one. Actually, it's kind of depressing because it's like in Indianapolis, there's one, and it's in a site where there used to be what was called the Market Square Arena, which was the arena where everything happened, and then they imploded that, and that was the location of Elvis Presley's last show that he ever played.
Oh, really?
It had a big placard like outside marking it. But then they like took it away a little bit, and then they built a Whole Foods, and now the placard sits outside the goddamn Whole Foods.
Puts down the Whole Foods.
So that kind of sucks. I'm just saying. But the whole point of this is that people who cannot afford it, the most disadvantaged people in our society, not the Whole Foods, the dollar stores, have figured out how to squeeze these people even further into poverty. And what he's showing on the screen right there, scroll back up a little bit.
Whoop, the chart.
Right there. This is an example of showing what the density of the stores are in North Tulsa. And Tulsa obviously is not a very, let's say wealthy, area. They know what they're doing. So they go in and they squeeze themselves into these very small amounts. So it's just like dollar store. So it looks like you've got an opportunity to get things, but you're being upcharged so much that you're getting nothing. So, okay, people have noticed this, right? Cities have noticed this, that like you look around on every corner and you're seeing these goddamn things everywhere. Well, a lot of people don't like that, right? So and it's a lot of not just like busybody Karens who are like, I don't like the look of that. That's not what I mean. But those people too. But like city planners and the people who work for the city and local people don't like that's there taking advantage of people. Some people are looking at this in good faith, not just that they don't like it. But the idea is that they started to go to their city councils and they say, what can we do about this, right? So some cities, and there's been about 60 cities across the United States, cities and towns, however you want to just, whatever your definition of each is, but you get the point. That since 2018, they have started to restrict Dollar General, Dollar Store, Dollar Tree, whatever, from coming to their locations there, as you can see on the screen. So they've started to make restrictions about them using zoning laws, saying, no, we're not going to approve your request. You cannot build here. So what do? Because again, they know their situation. They say, okay, well, we're not going to fight you. You say we can't build here. We won't build here. What we're going to do is go Spirit Halloween on this town, and we're just going to find some old asshole place that nobody wants, that's completely abandoned, and we're going to move in there. And you can't do anything about it. And that's what they do. That's why you see them not building new locations except in certain situations. Sometimes you see it, but for the most part, you see them pop into something that used to be there, or some long abandoned place. They just go in there. Yeah, do they make it nice and they fix it up? No, the fuck they don't. They don't at all. There have been people there that have worked there, and you've probably heard about them walking out and things like this because they open the stores before they're even finished. They stock them with garbage, literal rotting garbage. Then they will have, there's been testimonials about people trying to work there, and the floors are disgustingly dirty. There's mold everywhere. There are birds flying around the building, and then obviously they're shitting all over the products, and people are touching theirs. There's rats. So and there, it's like nobody's in charge. Like they just like, oh, okay, well, do something about it. And then people who work there have said they don't turn the air on. There's no air conditioning. There is no air conditioning. There is no heating. So we will get sick in these extreme conditions with these extreme toxins going on. And there's nobody to complain to because they're such a large corporation. They don't care. They're going to be like, what, are you going to do something about it? You can't. Because if they're not violating a zoning law, they're allowed to move in basically wherever they want to. So what they will do is, like, if they get threatened enough that, no, you can't build here, you can't be here, they just say, okay, well, you won't let us. We have plans to put in like 60 new locations. You're not going to let us do it. We will sue you. So then they tie up these cities in a bunch of litigation that they don't want to be in. The cities eventually are like, fuck this, we can't do this. We don't have the budget for this. And then the dollar stores get what they want anyway. And then once they've got a stronghold in a place, they just appear more and more and more. So that, again, it's like the McDonald's thing. Like, you can ultimately, in some cases, see one from another. And that, kind of ultimately ties into what we were talking about before, that there is, even when people are trying to fight these things, they can't, because capitalism has this really spooky way of figuring out how to get worse. That's really where we stand on a lot of this. That's why a lot of people are always calling it late stage capitalism, because you look at things and you're like, how much worse could it get? And it does, and you just couldn't really even imagine it, honestly. But there are people who have jobs whose job it is to imagine it and to implement this on people, and those are the people who should go straight to the hell because they have done this to society. And I don't like to be pessimistic about things, but I am of the mind that it just is not possible to get better without some sort of representation legislation. But then if you get a lobby that's as big as the Kroger food lobby, or as Walmart, or as the dollar stores bundled into one, who are greasing the palms and vacationing. There was recently, I can't deal with the John Oliver crowd. Like, that's just, it's like, here's these pre-approved stories of like of misdirection while we don't talk about what's actually important. But I did happen to hear some of the Clarence Thomas discourse going on there in an episode a week or so ago, and talking about how he was benefiting from all this dirty, dark money and stuff, and that Harlan Crow or whatever paid for pretty much his entire life, and then Harlan Crow's Hitler memorabilia collection. You know,
look, we just need more representation and high levels of power. If we just had
right, and that's what I'm saying. Like, these people are not going to give that up. Like, these people are not going to be like, no, I have morals, I have principles. And that's where we go back to the whole squad AOC thing, where everybody's like, oh shit, here's some new people coming in and they're not going to be part of this system, they're going to fight the system. No, no, they did not. And then we all found out the hard way about that. And it seems like every cycle that happens, we all just kind of find somebody to be like, they're going to do it, they're going to do it. It is not possible. It is not possible for people to, you know, it is, let's say that they do have these principles and they're like, because we kind of had that with Cory Booker in the beginning of his whole thing, where he lived in the public housing and he got to know people, and he was supposed to be this new guy who was really gonna, like, who understood what poverty was like, because he put himself willingly into that situation to learn what it was about. A couple of years later, took a bunch of fucking pharmaceutical money and had to give it back because everybody got so mad. So that's what we're talking about. You could not get people to represent people who are going to always be able to lord an advantage over the other people who, you know, that they're supposed to represent. That's just not, I guess, in the human lexicon. And until something changes, which, short of like alien invasion, I can't see what that's going to be. But because the legislation is not going to change to reflect this. Nobody's going to stop at the legislative level. Nobody's going to be like, we're stopping the spread of the dollar stores. There can only be so many in so many areas. It's not going to happen.
Let me give you my brief, opinion on this whole situation.
Please do.
We are running out of time. The people want food in places where it is not horribly profitable to operate a traditional grocery store, especially not with how like the world works today. So the reason that these stores can crop up in the first place is the long history that you kind of described, where we used to have corner stores that I guess were profitable somehow because they managed to keep existing. They got kind of driven out by, the first round was your Walmarts, where everyone went from, now, okay, you must now travel to the slightly larger town to get your Walmart. And now we've then kind of like rebounded back to, now the tiny corner stores are back, but they are all one of two big chains. You either got Family Dollar or Dollar Tree. And if you drive around the middle of nowhere America, it becomes like, you're like, man, the only stores in so many of these towns, driving around the Southwest, like rural Arizona, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, the only store you'll see is a Family Dollar or Dollar Tree. And they're not, while they do currently behave as parasitic entities, again, because of the system that we live under, because that's the only way you can exist, people do want food close to them, so they are, it's not that they're tolerated, it's like people are going to go there, because what else are you going to do? Drive 50 miles to the nearest Walmart or Kroger affiliate? Why would you do that? People having access to food close to them is a thing we all want. And if the incentive structure was geared towards that, providing food, and then what goes along with that, like a quality employment, kind of like with our school lunches, that's a permanent job or multiple jobs that won't go away. If I can utopianize my potential future for this, this is another situation where the thing itself I don't think is bad. It's the ownership and power relations over it. It's that the people who operate your Family Dollar and Dollar Trees have no input over it. The towns that they are put into have no input over it. You see that they're literally making legislation to try and stop, and it's still like Arizona outlawed payday loans, so now we have title loans where you put your car title up and receive a payday loan. They're going to find a way around it. And unlike payday loans, grocery stores in tiny towns are a thing that we want. So, like, why couldn't we have this situation where Family Dollar and Dollar Tree are essentially nationalized, not middleman, you get direct ownership over the thing. I don't know, maybe you call it the corner store and you attach it to every post office and or you just take over the current Dollar Tree and Dollar Tree, and they all have a list of like 500 whatever essential items that they're all gonna have. Like, everyone will have eggs and milk and bread, and they'll be fucking price controlled, where no matter where you're in the country, it's all the same price. Whoa.
Right.
Like, you can take this structure that is currently being puppeteered by the capitalist class, and if you instead just inverted that power relationship and had the people doing the work, owning it, making decisions, there is no reason that a tiny store with these like pre-done list of it also increases efficiency if you remove yourself from this whole like weird competition. Whoa. And you have what would that take? 3 people to operate that store, like working in shifts, like one person at a time. Like, it does. Yeah. The overhead is like nothing for these stores.
And what you're really describing here is nationalization, and that's what we should be in a nationalized situation, not with just utilities or internet, which is a utility now. You can't live without the internet. But that's exactly what you're describing. Is if there is a way to fix the problem that exists, because inherently, as you say, the stores existing is not the problem. It is who's operating them to what ends is the problem.
If they're straight up outlawed, like if you take one of these tiny towns and you replace their Dollar General with a tiny store that is operating profitably, you have now kind of like the point they're making with the shrinkflation and how you're already paying Whole Foods prices. Well, that's the kind of shit they'd have to charge to be profitable in your small town, which is why they went out of business in the first place. That issue isn't going to go away without some kind of subsidies. Like, you have to fund it like publicly,
right,
through some way other than just straight up profit motive, because people who live in the middle of nowhere deserve food, and you need something there that is able to tolerate operating at a loss, like a Family Dollar can. A lot of those stores don't make money; they're just there for market share.
Right. Yeah. Some sort of tax.
But what if it was to benefit all of us and not whoever the hell owns Family Dollar and Dollar Tree?
It's just the fact of the matter of, it's almost mind-boggling to look at these things and say, like, yeah, obviously we need a place to buy shoes. Obviously we need a place to buy food. We need opportunities to do these things and to run society. Yet people have figured out how to bastardize these systems so much that only a few people are ever able to really benefit. And then not just benefit, but benefit to the point of, deciding policy. They are the ones that there was a term that I always forget, and it's something about the way that the United States government, the type of government it is. It's not a democracy, but it's like
plutocracy.
Well, not it was something to do with like a terminology to do with it, like being like
corporatocracy is also
corporate, right? It was just the fact that that capital runs this. It's not just because there's other countries that use capitalism. It's a very popular system, around the world. It's not like it's like us in socialist world, like that we're the only ones out here. Like, it works in other ways, but it works because there is some sort of balance of power where governments operate in different ways, where they're not letting it run amok the same way that it does here. And that's why I'm always saying, like, and I'm actually kind of scared to say that, like, what comes next? Like, it's always something worse and worse and worse. Like, if you're of the millennial age group, even, like, you have been around a long time, it's just not like long, but like at least, the point of being able to see, like, things have never been good. They started off bad and then they kept getting worse. So it's like, we just kind of expect things to get better suddenly. It's not going to happen. But like, we are all out here like, things need to be better. Things need to be better. But it starts and stops in a place that we, as the proletariat, don't have any real control over, because we don't have any actual representation, and we cannot fight the money and the kickbacks that our government receives to do the bidding of these corporations and these companies. That's why Dollar General is allowed to literally plague the United States with their presence and take such advantage of people, because ultimately what they gain is going to, if you look at the Clarence Thomas scenario, is going to run back on every government official. They're all going to receive something, whether it be campaign donations or working trips.
Which is why you're not going to get a nationalize any of this, because they currently benefit from the very much private capital way that capitalism works. Capitalism got us to the point where there is, gosh darn it, there is a tiny grocery store in every town now. And now we need to pass that baton to a socialized form of benefit. and that, there you go, you did it. It's not that we burn them all down.
There used to be, I think probably still there are some places in some ways, but there were co-ops in a lot of, towns and cities, especially towns. But, there were co-op situations where people would bring, like if they worked on farms or whatever, they would bring their materials to a certain place where everybody would shop from this, what was there, kind of like the way the farmer markets work. But there were these cooperative situations where, okay, you need this, so you can get this here. You need this, you can get this from someone else here. But that has all also been wiped away by, just so these few corporations are able to benefit in ways that they should not be benefiting. And I know we talk about this a lot, but like I wish someone smarter than me would have an answer for this and let me know what it is, because I feel like every time I talk about this, and then I'm like, and then that's all. That's all, folks. Every time I kind of come up against the wall of the situation, like I'm just like, I don't know, I don't know what comes next. I just know that it's going to be, like I say, short of alien invasion, like what's going to stop the cycle of greed? Because, we can look into history and look at how other empires fell, and it usually had to do with greed and acquisition. So I guess we're just gonna on the accelerated track for that, because it took like Rome like a trillion years to fall before it finally did. But we're 300 years in, and it's already on the decline big time. But so like yeah, if you do if you do have some insights into this, or if you worked in any of these industries and you've seen it, and you'd have something you'd like to let us know about, we'd love to hear it. You can always reach out to us on our social medias, which are.
If you believe in the class struggle version of history, or dialectical historical materialism, capitalism already contains the two, just like feudalism before it contains the germ of the seed of the next system to come. We already have socialized production. It takes thousands of tens, hundreds of thousands of people working together as a team to make the society that we live in. And that benefit is then wholly captured by the private hands, just because they happen to own it. Not because they did the work, just because they happen to own it.
It really is a hostage situation. If you can very easily put it in those terms, that the vast majority of people, they took away everything's so monopolized. They took away our ability to make a choice. And the corporations like Walmart and Kroger and whatever, they don't care if one is cheaper than the other, because whichever one the person favors, or whichever one is the closest to somebody's house, is going to get the money anyway.
They literally coordinate together to be like, we'll be the most expensive. You said it here. Okay, we all agree. Like,
yeah, it's not necessarily a collusion situation.
Oh, so this one is. Prices are definitely a collusion situation, because there's only like 4 companies, and they all just have a little meeting, and they.
Well, yeah, I guess that can be true. In
I know what you mean, though.
I just think they just don't care. I think it's just easier just not to give a shit. In my mind, of course they can decide. In certain situations they probably do, but it just seems to me like they're gonna vote. They're gonna spend this money anyways. We've got the politicians in our pocket. What's the difference between if Kroger gets a couple extra million this year, or Walmart gets a couple extra million this year? We're all benefiting from it already.
Wait till those two merge. It's gonna happen. It's inevitably gonna consolidate.
And that's the thing. And that's the thing that really worries people about Kroger acquisitioning all of these other grocery stores and now wanting to combine with the other only largest grocery store chain in the country.
Talking about Albertsons, yeah.
Yeah, Albertsons. Is because that now you literally have a food czar. Like a whole country literally has a food czar at that point. And if you hear, I don't know about the other chains that they've got control of, but the Kroger runs tons of ads on the radio, on television. They run tons and tons of ads. And they're always like, you're going to get the freshest produce. And we get from local farmers. And we supply from local farmers, which may be true, maybe. when you do know that there is other like international suppliers of stuff too, and I'm not against that obviously, because it's like, where are you going to get mangoes from? Like you have to be able to get these things from other countries, which I'm fine with. But they can make up whatever they want and nobody's stopping them. They can say whatever they want and nobody's stopping them. There's literally, let's say they get control of everything. There's nothing to stop them from like, okay, we're going to take the Dollar General route and we're just not going to stock fresh stuff anymore. It's just going to be garbage and that's it.
Kroger's gradually becoming Walmart anyway. Mine sells like clothes and stuff now.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're eventually going to become basically two different Walmarts, and then they'll like just how every single industry works.
There's supposed to be, I don't know if this is really happening, but I've heard that the department store Kohl's and Aldi want to make a merger.
Yeah.
Where now that you can buy, you can buy products at an Aldi or food at a
Just get a random microwave at Aldi's.
Like, yeah, I'm like, I never went to Kohl's and I'm like, I need to get cucumbers. Like that's not like what I felt like I needed to do.
Because how can you what do you possibly do to compete? Like, what's Kohl's supposed to do at this point? We've now gotten to such a concentration. That's what I mean. And having everything in a store, is convenient, and I don't hate that part. It is only the ownership relations. I like factory farming in and of itself is not the issue. It's that all the factory farms are owned by like a single company there, and then they can just dictate prices. They can just.
Yeah.
I was told by a friend who used to work in the industry, there's apparently one person, or at least used to be, who controls the entire oat market of the entire country, and you just have to go talk to and they sit in the Chicago Board of Trade, and two other guys just look at him and then write down whatever he does. All right, that's the guy who owns it. Here's the prices. And like, it really is that simple for some of these. And you're like, why are prices out of control? Like,
and here's the thing too. I hate to bring up a new thing this late in the hour, but I think this is important.
Let's say, give me a closing statement.
Well, maybe you heard about this too. So genius is that, and everybody knows how everybody loves Wendy's. So like, who gives a shit about Wendy's? They proudly announced that they're going to start trying to do surge pricing, a la like how Lyft and Uber does. Nobody's gonna go to fucking Wendy's and pay extra money for garbage food. No, you know what? It's like, who is that obsessed with the Wendy's? That's like the dumbest business model I could ever imagine. But the point of it being is that they're not going to stop. These corporations are not going to stop. They're just going to keep thinking of more and more ludicrous ways. And of course that's not going to work. Of course it's going to be stupid. But they have, they're the stupid little think tank that believes that this is going to amount to something. And yeah, somebody just said, yeah, I'll pay $25 for a Dave single. I don't know if you're being facetious or not, but that's the point. That's the point. Like, nobody's going to do this stupid shit. And it's like right now, like even McDonald's, I know that people have been saying that they're protesting McDonald's in some measure because of their support of Israel. Well, obviously that's not going to put that much of a dent in McDonald's, right? But even McDonald's has come out recently and said that people are fine. And this is national news, honestly. I heard this in like national news, and it didn't really seem like they, being on the side of corporations, they will report it if it wasn't true in this case, that McDonald's is saying that people are finding they can't afford McDonald's. And that's like the bottom rung of cheapness. That's, dollar menu shit, right? That
Big Mac's like $10 by itself now.
Yeah, well, that people are finding that they specifically have found that people are cooking for themselves and eating at home because they're not willing to spend money at McDonald's anymore. And I love that. I don't eat fast food, but I love that. I think that they're a blight and a scourge, but I understand the need for them. It's supposed to be fast and affordable and food you can have right now. On your lunch break or, after a doctor appointment, or feed your kids dinner real quick because you got other things you got to do. That has always been the whole purpose and point of fast food anyway. And now they've got like somebody like Wendy's has this idea that like, that's what's, like we're going to turn us into some sort of completely different business model that is never going to work. Like, all right, well, whatever. But that's what I mean by when I say, like, I can't see how things can get better, but I hope that somebody else knows of ways that things can get better. It's just that, at this stage, we've had these corporations around for so long that, as I see it, nationalization on a lot of them is the only way to stop any of this stuff from happening. But then the government will never support nationalizing things. And, we can't even have healthcare. They're not going to nationalize. Oh, and speaking of which, one thing that makes me angry that I, again, bring up another story. I just read, did you guys know that Israel has free healthcare already? They have completely free universal healthcare.
Funded by the United States government.
that they can come to the United States and get free healthcare here too, and any procedure that they want.
Well, look, we're allowed to go join the IDF. It's a fair trade.
Okay, you're right. Yeah, and then I guess
we literally fund other people's healthcare. We pay for the entire Ukrainian universal healthcare system right now, whatever thing they have, which is still more than what we have.
That's going on for sure. It's what a mess, and it's like I feel like the longer we go into, we're just spiraling. At this point, we're just spiraling in this conversation and in what's going on.
So I gotta go unpack and do some laundry and see what.
I think we need to stop the misery. Let's just stop the misery today. So thank you all so much for being with us and listening to all this horrible news that we had to share with you. We really appreciate you. As always, you can reach out to us on our socials, which you can see below. There's some weird stuff going on with the messaging system on Twitter right now. So maybe if you don't follow, you can start messaging in if you need to reach out first. Otherwise, just tag and we'll see. We'll see your post. But take care of yourselves and each other. And we hope to see you again next week. And I guess that's it. So I'm just gonna go. Okay. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye,
Goodbye.